Hello everyone, welcome to Sauce Labs' mobile testing event, Browsers, Apps, and Robots with Jason Huggins. Just want to thank you all for showing up. My name is Ashley, I'll be moderating this event, and we'll be covering mobile testing, both web browsing, and also hybrid and native apps, and at the end we'll have a little peek at a robot that Hugs has built. So yeah, just a couple things before we get started. This will be recorded and we will send out the video after the fact. It'll also be put up on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/saucelabs, and we'll be putting the links up on our SlideShare page. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear them, so please write them into your console and we'll answer them during the Q&A. So thanks again, and I'll pass it over to Jason.
All right, I think we're okay. We're all set up here. Can everyone see me? Right, so hi, I'm Jason Huggins. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Sauce Labs and the co-creator of the Selenium testing tool, or set of tools, toolkit. Actually, that's a controversy right there. Is it a framework or a toolkit? It's a toolkit. Anyway, so welcome to the webinar today. As I do a whole bunch of demos, I love if you all followed along. So the first thing you're going to need to do is go to saucelabs.com/sign up and use the promo code Appium Sauce. So let's actually go do that right now. So here is our, hide the controls here. Here's saucelabs.com at the top right hand of the screen. Click sign up. And you can enter your information. Of course, we would love it if we could take all your money, sign up for a very expensive account, but there is a free option. So sign up today for the free plan. Enter your email address. Don't use mine though. I'm at hugs@saucelabs.com. Enter your telephone number and company name. So you'll get a wonderful phone call from our sales department who love to chat with you, find out how you're doing things. And click I have a promo code. Enter the promo code Appium Sauce. It's right there. And then last thing you need to do is set a username and password. I think for this demo I was using Hugs Webinar in this particular run through. It's going to do Hugs Webinar 3. Let's see which one works. There we go. And the password. One for my luggage. So I'll click Create Account, and you'll get dropped into your account page. So when you get a new account, you actually can kind of look on the side that you've got, it's a free account, so you can run 2 tests in parallel, and you got kind of buckets of minutes for various things. If you're brand new to Sauce Labs, again, the way to kind of understand us is that we are browsers in the cloud. And specifically, you can drive these browsers either through a keyboard and mouse, which I'll show you really quickly, or through an API, through the Selenium WebDriver API. So to really kind of see what we do very quickly, this is what you get to when you get to the getting started. You have a wizard here that can actually kind of talk you through all of the ways to drive it from your favorite language. There's kind of a way really quickly to get to a interactive session. So click New Interactive Session. And I've got a project that I've been working on. I need to test it that it works on the iPad. So it's pinthing.com is my little project, and I'm going to make sure that it works, let's see, on an iPad 5.1. So what we're doing here is we're now booting a machine from scratch, and we've got this thing that we call security through purity, in the sense of it's a nice clean install, and we're booting it in about 30 seconds. Also, we've been working on this for about 2 years, specifically with a Mac cloud. There are no Mac cloud vendors really that are out there specifically tailoring it for testing. So we worked with the KVM project, the QEMU KVM project, and the open source contributors on that project to get patches in there so we actually could run OS 10 in our cloud, in our data center. So as we're booting this up, it's also booting the iPad simulator, and then you can actually then start controlling it through a keyboard and mouse. So while we're waiting for that to come up, I'll actually kind of jump ahead really quickly to what it would look like right afterwards. So I've got a manual session here And after a manual session, you can view the screenshots and the video. This is kind of just a hello Google kind of a test. This is very useful even if you're not using automation. If you want to make sure that, let's say you don't have an iPad, you want to see what your website looks like in the simulator. Hey, this looks good. So it's one of those things of taking screenshots, integrate this into your QA environment, and anyway, that's one way to use us. And eventually it did come up. Here's the live session of pinthing.com working in the simulator. One of the things I wanted to show you is if the screenshot looks good, or actually if it looked bad, you actually can click this button and log it as a bug. And when I'm done with the session, I can just click stop, and that will just be stored into the system. So that's kind of manual testing using Sauce, and that just kind of explains what we do. We have all these different combinations. So now let me show you how to automate this with Selenium. So we've got a basic test here, and actually to follow along and get the source code for this, if you do click Getting Started, and then I've got a favorite language called Python, so I'm going to click on that, and we've got the instructions right here on how to follow along. I've got that source code right here on my computer, basic example, so I'm going to run that. So run the basic example. And that's actually going to go to kind of a tutorial app that we have that just clicks on a couple of buttons, does some verification. And that's running. Let's just kind of see what happens. One of the cool things about our service, and one of the things that's kind of a feature that's near and dear to my heart, is I actually can watch the test running live in the cloud as it's going, as it's booting up. Of course, sometimes when you're watching an automated test run, it's a little bit like watching paint dry. So, oh, here it is, it's booted. So kind of watching lots of cooking shows, I'm going to jump ahead here. And I've got the test results pre-rolled. So as you can see now, this is a test that was driven from WebDriver Selenium 2. And you can see all the commands that were sent over the wire. Every time you send a new command, let's say getting the value of an element, we take a screenshot of that. From a testing kind of QA point of view, the feedback that we've gotten over the years is that it's kind of like the black box of an airplane. With the most interesting thing is actually what happened last, or at least in the last couple seconds. So we also have a screenshot of the last thing that happened, very useful for when a test fails. But you also can see the commands that led up to it. And at the top, if I actually click this, this is a recorded movie, a screencast, effectively, of that entire test. Again, this is something that you can forward along to the dev team, and it's really useful to find out exactly why this thing worked or didn't work. If you go back to the test that was running, yeah, that's it, running live. And it just ended. So in that 46 seconds, or in the first one that was running live, 56 seconds, we're booting a machine from scratch, running the test, and tearing it all down. So that's really using Selenium off the shelf. If you ran it locally or on Sauce, this is the things that we have in production that you can use. And if you sign up for a pro account, you can get tons and tons of parallel ability to drive these things. Selenium projects and then Sauce. Specifically, this is an example of mobile web. We're driving a website, but as rendered in iPhones and iPads. We also support Android in various configurations. So that's what's there today. The really exciting thing is what I want to show you is with Appium, and specifically driving native tests, native apps, and also hybrid apps, which are kind of like native apps that you get from an app store, but are also effectively just kind of websites. You're using HTML and JavaScript in that app. So actually, let me kind of jump. Actually, we just dove right into these demos. I've got actually a couple of slides here for you. So, Appium. What the heck is Appium? The quick way to kind of understand the name is it's basically Selenium for apps. If the history of the Selenium project has been nothing but desktop browsers and slowly getting into mobile browsers, Appium is a little bit more grander in its vision. So there's a couple key things about it. It's open source. I'll have a link for it at the end of the talk. It's up on GitHub/Hugs/Appium, and that's where all the activity is happening. We have lots of contributors, not just from Sauce, but from lots of people around the interweb helping with this project. So the key thing is open source, Apache 2 license. One of the big things, very big in my mind, I think it's a problem actually with all of the iOS app testing tools that are out there, is that they require modifying your application to get it to be automatable or testable. The key thing with Appium is that you do not have to modify the app at all, or at least you're not required to. There is a, if people have been in testing for a while, of course, there's always a way that you can make your app more testable. One way to kind of like a tip here for figuring out how to actually make an app testable is to, it's very closely related to accessibility. So if you care about making your application work for blind people, those things that you have to do to make it accessible are the exact same things that you need to make it automatable. Effectively, Selenium and therefore Appium and any kind of automated tool is effectively a blind user when they need to get to the metadata that is not quite visible on the screen. Anyway, but you don't have to modify your application to use Appium. The other thing is, the key thing is it uses the WebDriver API. So once we get it into our service, or if you already have existing Selenium infrastructure, this works with, at the moment, a subset of the API, but it works with all the other tools that go along with it. The other thing is, one thing that was different than what we saw in the tools on the market is that you can interact with it live, and I'll show you a demo of that. At least for fans of Ruby and Python and JavaScript, interactivity, request response, cause and effect, very quickly to be able to send a command and get the response. That is very important. A lot of tools where you have to compile it up and then send it off, and you don't get that interactivity. So that was an important feature in Appium. Also, I don't have the demo for you today, but it is possible to run this on real devices, which is also very important from a system end-to-end test. Roughly, here's the architecture. I think this is the last one before I get to the demo. We are really riding on the coattails of Apple's official way to do testing. It's the Instruments app. What we do is then create this thing called the Appium server. You run that, and that's just like a Selenium web server talking the HTTP WebDriver protocol. So your test talks to the Appium server. The Appium server then launches Instruments, which then launches the iOS simulator. So with all that talking, let's dive back into the demos again, right? I think that's the next slide's my next key, right? So here's the first thing that you do. I've got some kind of pre-rolled commands. Everything's still good, right? Great. So I put everything on my computer just on projects. There is one prerequisite. So obviously Appium is for iOS testing at the moment. So I'm kind of assuming an OS 10 machine and the latest. I think I'm on Mountain Lion on my computer here. There is one prerequisite. You already have Python on your computer, but you do need to install a little web framework called Bottle. It's very small, but Appium currently is requires it. I think future versions of Appium, it might be just like an app you download and you won't have to worry about this stuff, but so this is a little bit of the tiny little bit of a hairy setup here, right? So install Bottle, then clone the project from GitHub. Then once you have it cloned, we actually include a sample test app in the project. And so that's the path right there. So it's Appium. Once you downloaded it, it's in sample code /app/test app. The thing is then, that's just the source code. You actually need to build it. So I'm going to show you how to build it. I'm going to do that live really quickly. So there we go. The build succeeded. And now that you have that, you should have in your directory, build directory. Within build, you should have release. And then inside there, you have test app. So that's the path to it. I've got it actually right here. At least on my computer, that's the entire path to it. That's important. So again, one of the things that's currently missing in the tutorial, we need to fix that, is download the code and then these two steps. Compile it with Xcode and then get the path to the app. So now that you have that path, you really want to use that absolute path. I've got a interactive demo here for you. So I've got this queued up. If you go into Let me show you where I am real quick. I'm in this directory. So after I've checked out Appium, I go into one more directory called Appium. I then basically launch the Appium script. So first command is Appium, second is Python, appium.py, and then the path to your app. I'll launch that, and then over here on the right, and this is running locally, the iPhone simulator will launch any second now. I've got a, there you go. I've got a script here kind of pre-rolled, so I'll just kind of show you some of these commands. So here's our sample app. It's really kind of the world's simplest calculator. It's got two fields. You're going to enter a number in the first field, enter a number in the second field, click the compute sum button, and we'll get a value. So you can kind of, again, the key thing here is that we are riding on the coattails of instruments and specifically Apple's UI automation API. So if you're looking for how to interact with this, where the documentation, like this phrase right here, UIA window, that is a Googleable little phrase. You can go and search that, take that field, search for it, and you can get all the Apple documentation on the fields and methods you can call on a UIA window. One of them, for example, is to ask for all the text fields that are associated with that window. So I'll do that right here. And you get back a UI automation element array. I'm going to cheat here. And that's an array you can, like with JavaScript, refer to the first element, which is bracket 0 close bracket. And you get a reference to UIA text field. Let's actually do something interesting now. I'm going to set the value of the first field. So this is the command. This is all interactive locally. And it's going to put 3 in that field. So there puts the 3. Now let's get a value into that second field. So 34. 34 is the periodic table number for Selenium. Slight inside joke. Then, now that we've got it all set up, we'll actually tap that button. So you can ask the main window for the list of buttons. That's an array. You can ask, you can introspect things. This is why I like interactive programming. I think it's actually named, sorry. You can kind of figure out what's the lay of the land. Here, compute sum button. Now I'm actually going to tap it. And this is really basically, what automation tests are, very much in a nutshell, right? Typing, clicking, and getting a value. And I'm a big fan of keeping tests simple. I like tests to be really no more sophisticated than this. Now to get the value, that 7 that's on the screen, this is the magic incantation to get that field, or to get the value of it. And that's 7. I could roll this up into a script and then do an assertion on that 7, that when I do 3 plus 4, I get 7. That's how to interact with this live and dynamically. That's one aspect of Appium. Now let's do this automated. Oh wait, before I do that, I need to end the session. Sorry about that. Okay, it's quit. It's good. Now let's speed up here. From Appium's point of view, that we've implemented a WebDriver server, you kind of have to do two things in two different windows. First, I have to launch it. I'm in this directory, in the Appium directory, and if you just do Python server.py, it'll say, hey, too few arguments. So I've done this path right here. I launched the server, give it the port or the address, basically I'm listening to anything on the local machine. And again, it's the absolute path to the app. So I'm going to launch that server, and now it's listening localhost on 4723. I've got a script here. Actually, look at that for a second. It's very similar to the sample test that we had in our documentation. And again, it's very similar to what I just did as a live demo. It's going to get those two fields, set those fields to random value, click that button, and then get the value. Make sure the sum is actually correct. So this is a classic Python script, or a Selenium script, in the sense of I've got a script over here. It's going to talk to a WebDriver server, and then it, on our behalf, is going to launch instruments and the iPhone app. So this is now what you're watching. Two random numbers. We're going to get the sum and do an insertion on that. So we're entering 6 and 4, clicking compute sum, and getting the value. I think every time you run this script, it's actually a random number generator to make sure that it's random numbers inputted, and we make sure that the sum is correct, though. So that was it. That was running locally, and that's a very simple test that automated that manual test that we we're doing, the interactive one. Again, that's local. So one of the big takeaways from today's demo is that we do have Appium up and running in our server, but it's still early days in getting it all fleshed out and as compatible as it possibly can with the WebDriver API. So I really encourage you to go check out the code, fork it, and join the project and help us complete the implementation. There's a couple of gotchas yet. It doesn't execute JavaScript yet. The actual WebDriver command execute script isn't there. However, from the mobile testing summit that we had last month, we got a lot of committers of all these various open source mobile testing frameworks together, and one of the things actually that came up with it was a technical fix to this problem. So, in a month or two, perhaps this will be fixed, but right now, Appium doesn't support that. And that's actually a big deal for a lot of people in the sense that all they use is execute script to inject things into a web view to execute code. Obviously, execute script doesn't make any sense in the native app if you're not talking to JavaScript into a window. But this is important for testing hybrid apps. But that will be there. One other thing is that we noticed, because we're again drafting off of UI automation and instruments, it's interesting that Apple actually implemented a hard-coded 1-second delay between each command. We're working around that, and one of the weird fixes that we found was that if we actually set the system clock back a second every time we send a command, send it back again, it goes faster. So we found a crazy workaround, and for people who are in the middle of their career in test automation, you probably nod your head in agreement that unfortunately crazy things like that are often necessary to get testing to go faster, or just to get it to work, period. But this is one of those weird things. Hopefully at some point we can talk to Apple and get them to take out the 1-second delay. But you will notice it's a little bit slower because of it, currently at least. But like I said before, we are still using UI automation. And that execute scripts commands, one of the things that we actually found was, if you are automating a hybrid app and you're interacting with a web view, there is a behind-the-scenes second port that's open. That's called the WebKit Remote Debugging Protocol. So we're looking to hopefully hijack that protocol and that port, bring that into Appium, so we actually can get that execute script support. Other things that we're kind of looking forward to as the project, right now, it's just about iOS and just about testing your own applications. But an app is an app, so there's no reason why we can't actually drive mobile Safari. Right now, the Selenium project has a particular way to do mobile web testing, but it would be nicer if we could use Appium, drive the off-the-shelf mobile Safari application that comes on iOS, and then from a system testing point of view, that really is when you're testing your mobile app, and you want to make sure that actually works on Safari, you're testing it in the actual same browser that your users use. Obviously, everything today that I've been showing you is iOS specific, but Appium, again, built into the name, it's not iOS Appium. We're hoping to make it more generic for all apps on all platforms. So we hope to drive Chrome on Android, or actually any app on Android, looking to make sure that this is cross-platform controllable, just like Selenium itself is. But obviously, Appium will be focused on mobile. And then the last thing that I'm really interested in doing, but this is more in the realm of fun, and we'll see how actually serious this is. But it's fun and serious. Actually using this to drive robots. I've been working on this for a year, but there's this idea how basically that mobile's a little bit different different. When you have apps on tablets, apps on the desktop, it doesn't really matter whether you're running it locally or in the cloud. But mobile is a little bit different. You've got all these different accelerometers and things like that. So there is a sense of, from a system testing point of view, if your users are clicking buttons and verifying things in an iPad, you want to do that as close as possible. And a robotic finger actually is the closest possible way to verify the app works just like a user would. So I've got one more demo today, and then we'll open up to questions. And it actually is a little robot demo here. So I'm going to switch back to my window. See if I can do this real quickly without giving you vertigo. So here I am again. And now I'm just going to show you the little robot that I have. And I am going to, sorry about this, pull this over. So the demo that I actually have working, a little bit more interesting than the calculator. This one is Angry Birds. It's always a little bit more fun if the volume is on, right? So I've got this robot. And first try didn't quite work, so my robot's still a little creaky, but let's try this again. I've got various commands that I can do. Right at the beginning, we're kind of at the early stages here of the robot apocalypse, but I've got a couple of commands. I've got up, down, and throw. So, and throw is really just up and down. So if I do up, that goes up. Go do down, that goes down. If I want to throw it, I'll just go back up again. And let's see what happens. I think this will work. There you go. So with funny little demos like this, once I'm lucky, but twice I'm good. So this is a hybrid automated manual testing. Don't mind my, my hand right there. Let's try this again. But this time I'll actually use the throw command. Right. I don't know. What's everyone bet? 2 stars or 3 stars? I think that was at least 2. Oh, 1. Terrible. Okay, so I've got my work cut out for me. Again, so the idea for this, I know it's completely ridiculous and silly, but the point is that system testing is a rare, weird thing, and you want to mimic the end user interaction as close as possible. So there is a rationale for, if your friends are clicking buttons with their finger, you want a robotic finger to click on it. So I'm going down this path of making robots and having them driven by Appium. So at the end, you can choose to run your tests in simulators, run the test on a real device, but still just kind of emulating the typing and clicking, or with a real robot. And right at that moment where instead of telling the simulator or the API to send a simulated click, I actually end up routing that command to an actual robot that clicks on an XY coordinate. So again, you don't have to buy into all the crazy stuff with the robots to get use of Appium. You can still just be a normal human being and run it all in simulators or devices through an API. Again, kind of to review here, go to saucelabs.com and saucelabs.com/signup. Use the promo code today. It's Appium Sauce. If you want to get the code for Appium, it's github.com/hug/Appium. And of course, the obligatory, you should follow us on Twitter. So we are Sauce Labs, and also the shameless plug, you should follow me on Twitter as well. I'm Hugs, H-U-G-S. So at this point, I think I would like to open it up to questions.
Yep. We will jump right in there.
And I'll just stay here and smile. Hi.
Yes. Well, speaking of the robot, someone wants to know, is there or will there be a way to build or buy your own robot?
There is. Yeah, I'll just say yes, and definitely, and yeah, check back. I don't know what the phrase is, but yes, we are definitely working on it. Yes. If you follow Sauce Labs or Hugs on Twitter, then yeah, when we have more to announce there, we'll definitely say it on one of those 2 channels.
All right, so back to testing the native. So can you switch to other apps or to the home screen?
Good question. You can, again, there's a kind of a mantra is if UI automation and instruments can do it, then Appium can do it. Really, I mean, really, in this particular case, be able to switch apps or go back to the home screen, that's a limitation of UI, of UI automation. I know there is a command that you can simulate going back to the home screen and like basically exiting the application and getting back into it. One of the limits, so that is there. Yes, you can if you had something in your application that got triggered when you left or when it came in. However, switching from app to app, that is a limitation of UI automation, that you can't do that, which is actually kind of annoying. One of the guy who actually created the project, Dan Cuellar, he noticed this, was telling me about it. There is a way, but it's a little bit more of a kind of a hacky workaround at this point. If you needed, let's say you had an app that when you bought something, let's say you can then send out a tweet, and then you switch to the Twitter application, and then it comes back to your application. In that interaction, that would be your app, Twitter app, back to yours. That's effectively kind of, yeah, exactly what you're asking for. There is a way to do it where you can write an Appium test to use your application. Then you actually switch back to your desktop. You use AppleScript to, or some other scripting language to run the entire automation, where effectively it's 3 Appium scripts doing the thing in your app, sending the tweet in Twitter, and then going back to your application. There's also another kind of hacky workaround where if you use something like Sakuli, that has no limitation on what it can click on the screen. But right now, it's really in the category of hacky workarounds. I would say like Appium at this point where it's most useful, it's a single application interaction. So sorry for the long answer to that question, but that's a limitation at the moment.
Great. Do people need the source code of the app that they're testing?
They don't actually. In that, it might have been a little bit too quick in the demo that I showed you when you upload it to Sauce Labs. You're just uploading the app itself, and we don't need the source code for it. Yeah.
Great. One user tried to run Appium via Clojure using the CLJ, I guess the Clojure WebDriver library.
Okay.
Didn't work though.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas? Do you know of anyone using it with Clojure? Or?
I don't. I would recommend, if you haven't already, and I apologize if you have done this and we haven't answered yet, but there is an Appium Google group. So it's Appium-Discuss is the name. Obviously, more information the better. If you just had a general question like, hey, I just couldn't get it to work, here are the steps that I took. If you have something where it should have worked and you found some kind of bug, you're getting like a very specific error message, I actually recommend that you then, in the GitHub project for Appium, create an issue and we can work that. I don't think anyone on the project actually has Clojure experience in particular, although we are perhaps dangerous when it comes to hacking around with the JVM and Java. But again, yeah, ask a question on Appium Discuss or log an issue on GitHub Issues, and we can just work it from there. I don't think I can debug it right now without more detail.
How would you compare Appium to Calabash?
I think if I'm remembering my facts correctly with Calabash, I think it requires Cucumber as a front end. I hope I'm right about this. If there's a Calabash developer, or you are the Calabash developer asking the question, sorry, if, someone can fact check me here publicly. There is a close requirement that you have to write your tests in the Cucumber syntax. I believe when it comes to testing tools, really, there's enough problems or engineering, whatever that's involved in getting the automation to work at all, that's what I'm focusing on. We are using the WebDriver API, but I don't like requiring that people use Cucumber. So I'm a Python guy or a JavaScript guy. I really don't like the Cucumber syntax. I like it for other reasons, but the actual syntax itself, I'd rather prefer just writing in language. So I don't like it for that. I think I would like it more if it was just an automation engine, but you didn't have to write your tests to that level. And I hope I'm right about that specific point. The other point about that is I think you also have to modify your application. You have to include things into your app to get it to be to work, and that's the big difference between Appium and Calabash. It's yeah, no code modifications required. I hope I'm correct about those 2 points. I think I am, but if I'm wrong, it's not out of no conspiracy theories. I've just yeah, I haven't looked at it in a little bit.
All right. So is the next robot going to hold the mobile device so that you can tilt, rotate it, etc.?
Right. These are my awesome. These are my favorite kind of questions. So if you're asking about the next version, yeah, sure, awesome, yeah, come on over to Sauce Labs and let's start hacking it and whiteboarding it and things like that. I think beyond that, so this is what is so weird about mobile, right? You want to make sure that the thing works when you rotate the screen or when you flip it. So yes, you need to put the robot that I have now inside a bigger robot that can rotate it, right? But then you also want to make sure that your app works when you're clicking it and rotating it and walking down the street. So of course we need a robot that is like on one of those two-wheeled robots that can walk down the screen or walk down the street. So it can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. And right now I'm just really at the clicking button stage. I'm sure it makes sense to have more convoluted Rube Goldbergian contraptions that do more simulated testing. And rotating is definitely on that list.
Sounds like we need to do a robot hackathon.
I think we definitely need to do a robot hackathon.
Get everyone here to.
Right.
Someone suggested we do a competition to see.
Totally should.
Yeah.
Completely on board with that.
Totally.
More, please.
All right. Let's see what else. Does Apple UI Automation give Appium support for pinch, swipe, and multi-touch?
Yes. There's support in there. I'm not sure. I'm wondering how much detail I should get into. It is in UI Automation. There also is support for pinch and zoom in the WebDriver API as well, and we are now in that kind of Rosetta Stone aspect of things of mapping the UI Automation API to the WebDriver API. That's in the all seriousness category of things. And then throwing in the robot here, my robot just has one finger. I haven't implemented pinch and zoom yet. But in the serious, trying to get work done category of things, yes, pinch and zoom is in the API, and we're in the process of mapping that to the Appium API.
Great.
Actually, one point, perhaps it might not be so obvious. I did show 2 demos about using WebDriver, or excuse me, using Appium. One was the interactive, where I was actually typing. I was actually at that point typing UI automation JavaScript commands directly into instruments and was executing it. The second demo I showed was the mapping between that JavaScript API to the WebDriver API, and I was driving it through Python. So when we're in this gap now where so there's something that exists in UI automation, but we haven't implemented it yet on the WebDriver side, you could still use Appium to basically just have a JavaScript test and send it the UI automation commands. If you're familiar with UI automation, the requirement there was that you write your tests just in JavaScript, and when you run your tests, it's in that. So if you're familiar with that, you can actually use Appium. But at that point, you can also use instruments UI automation without Appium to send it in there. But yeah, we're working on the mapping.
I think we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. Going back to one of your earlier demos when you were talking about indexes, can you access the text fields by name instead of index?
Yes. Yeah, I think we're going to have to build out our code samples to show multiple examples on how to do that. The simplest thing that could possibly work when I did this was I just got an array of all the text fields and then got that back as like an array, then iterated over that locally to kind of get the one that I wanted. Also, again, future development for the Appium project is support the different kind of locator styles that WebDriver supports. So not just location and array, but also, yeah, by name, perhaps even trying to implement as much as we can of like CSS locator strategy to find things. So yes, you can get it by name. And we're looking on how to take the existing syntax for that in UI automation and mapping that appropriately to the WebDriver API. At the moment, I think getting that array and getting it by just array reference which is brittle, which the better thing to do is by name. You can do that, I think, in Appium now, and it's just we need to make sure that we get a code sample out so people can actually start using it that way. Was that the 2 of 2, or was that 1 of 2?
Well, I just wanted to say we did have a question about the promo code being used if you're an existing Sauce customer. So I was just going to say we'd be happy to give you the same promo as well if you just send a note to help@saucelabs.com, or you tweet to Jason, or get in touch with us. Any of the other ways that you do, we'll be glad to manually add the minutes in.
Do you want to briefly say what is special about the promo code versus just signing up for?
Oh yeah, so all of our accounts come with free minutes, but the promo code gets you 1 month of free testing at our $49 a month price plan. So you'll get 1,000 automated minutes, and then also 200 manual minutes. So you can try out both of the things that Jason showed, and yeah, so that'll just automatically populate, and those will not expire. You have to use the promo code before the end of the month, but the minutes will still be in there even next month. So yeah, I think, let's take one more question because this is a good one. When can we expect more documentation and examples for Appium?
You should always expect them as soon as we possibly can get them out to you. I'm trying to think. I can only come up with classic developer answers. One would be welcome to the project. Thank you for your contribution. Patches welcome. Documentation also welcome. In all seriousness, I think this is also in the category of besides having a hack day at Sauce, we should perhaps have an Appium hack day. Instead of having a robot hack day, have an Appium hack day where things like that we can just get it going. It's one of the documentation is always one of those things the developers just always mean to do and never get around to. So let's put an event on some calendar somewhere and have like an Appium doc day and actually get some stuff out there. This kind of an event helps that little how to download the code and compile it and get running. I'll be putting the sample code of what I just did today up. It'll probably live with a blog post associated with this or up on a gist. Because that's one of those things of yes, contributions welcome. If you want to write a documentation or write a document, we would love to have that. If you're just waiting patiently for us to do it, yeah, we definitely know we need to do more of it.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Just as a reminder, we've got this recorded, and we will be sending out an email with that link and all of the other ones that Jason mentioned as well. Yeah, so thanks so much.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.